There is a lie so effective, so perfectly disguised, that most people who believe it will go their entire lives never realizing they've been deceived. It doesn't sound like a lie. It doesn't feel like temptation. It doesn't come with horns or fire or a voice hissing from the shadows. It comes disguised as confidence. It comes disguised as independence. It comes disguised as the most reasonable, modern, mature idea a person could possibly hold. And according to centuries of Catholic teaching on the nature of evil, echoed today by priests, exorcists, and spiritual directors who deal with the demonic on a regular basis. This single lie is responsible for more spiritual destruction than almost anything else combined. It's not a lie about drugs, not a lie about violence, not even primarily a lie about sex. It's a lie about you. Specifically, a lie about whether you need anyone at all. Stay until the end, because by the time this video is over, you may realize you've been repeating this lie to yourself for years and never even knew it had a name. Most people, when they picture the work of the devil, picture something loud, horror movies, possession, spinning heads and guttural voices, Ouija boards and dark basements. And that image is exactly why the real danger slips past almost everyone, because if evil only looked like that, it would be easy to avoid. You'd see it coming. You'd run. But the priests, theologians, and spiritual writers who have spent decades studying the pattern of temptation, going all the way back to the early church fathers, describe something far quieter, far more patient, far more effective. They describe a lie that doesn't ask you to do anything dramatic at all. It just asks you to believe one small thing about yourself, that you're enough, that you don't need grace, don't need mercy, don't need forgiveness, community, accountability, or God, that you can handle your own life, your own moral compass, your own destiny entirely alone. It sounds almost noble when you say it out loud, doesn't it? I don't need anyone. I can do this myself. We put that sentence on motivational posters. We build entire self-help industries around it. We praise people who say it in interviews, and that's exactly the point. This lie doesn't have to hide. Society hands it a microphone. According to traditional Catholic teaching, this isn't a modern invention. It's the original temptation, the same root lie offered in the Garden of Eden. You will be like God, not you will be evil, like God, self-sufficient, answerable to no one, in need of nothing outside yourself. The theology is blunt about where this leads. The sin underneath almost every other sin, the one church tradition has called the root of all vice, is pride, not the healthy self-respect of knowing your worth, but the corrosive kind that convinces you that you don't need saving because you were never really in danger to begin with. And that's the trap. You can't ask for help with a problem you don't believe you have. If this lie only ever appeared as, you don't need God, most people would reject it instantly, even ones who don't consider themselves particularly religious. It's too obvious. So instead, Spiritual writers describe it wearing 3 much subtler disguises, each one tailored to a different kind of person. Disguise 1. I'm not that bad. This is the lie of comparison. It doesn't deny that evil exists. It just insists that you personally are on the safe side of the line. I've never murdered anyone. I've never stolen anything major. I'm not like those people. It feels like humility because it sounds like you're admitting some flaws. But notice what it actually does. It lets you set the bar. It lets you grade your own test. And when you're the one holding the measuring stick, you will always come out looking fine. Catholic moral teaching has a name for the danger hiding in this comparison game. It's called the near occasion of complacency, not the big dramatic fall. The slow, comfortable drift 1 inch at a time because you never felt like you needed to change direction. Disguise 2. I'll deal with it later. This is the lie of delay. It doesn't tell you your soul doesn't matter. It just tells you it can wait. I'll get more serious about my faith when I'm older. I'll fix that relationship eventually. I'll ask for forgiveness when I actually feel ready. This disguise is patient. It doesn't need to win today. It only needs you to keep saying, not today, until there are no more toe days left. And this is where it turns genuinely dark, because none of us know how many toe days we actually have. Spiritual directors who work with the dying often report the same haunting pattern. The deathbed regret is almost never, I did too much good too early. It's always some version of I meant to, I was going to, I ran out of time. Disguise 3. I can fix myself. This is the most flattering disguise of all, and the one aimed squarely at high achievers, perfectionists, and people who pride themselves on discipline. It says, you don't need mercy. You don't need to be forgiven. You just need to try harder, optimize more. Fix it yourself quietly without anyone, including God, ever needing to be involved. This one is dangerous precisely because it looks like virtue. Self-improvement isn't the enemy, but self-improvement without humility becomes a locked room. You keep renovating a house you refuse to let anyone else walk into. And a soul sealed off like that doesn't heal. It just gets better at hiding its cracks. 3 disguises, 3 different audiences, 1 identical route. You don't need anyone. Here's the part that should genuinely unsettle you. This lie doesn't primarily target people who are already living recklessly. It targets people who are trying to be good. Why? Because a person actively engaged in obvious wrongdoing usually still has a flicker of conscience, some part of them whispering, this isn't right. That flicker is a doorway. It can lead back, but a person who is convinced they're already fine, there's no flicker, no alarm, no doorway, just a quiet, comfortable ceiling. They never think to look above. Spiritual writers describe this as one of the most dangerous spiritual states a person can be in. Not the person who has fallen and knows it, but the person standing perfectly upright who has quietly convinced themselves the ground beneath them will never move. Think about how this plays out in ordinary life, not extreme cases. A man who hasn't spoken to his estranged brother in a decade doesn't wake up one day and decide, I choose bitterskenass forever. He simply never gets around to reconciling. And each year that passes makes the silence feel a little more normal, a little more justified, a little more fine. A woman drifting from her faith doesn't announce, I reject God. She just gets busy, then busier, until one day, years later, she notices the distance and can't quite remember when it started. None of these people would describe themselves as deceived. That's the entire mechanism. The lie doesn't need you to agree you're lost. It only needs you to stop checking. And this is where the warning sharpens into something almost clinical, drawn from centuries of Catholic spiritual direction on the nature of temptation. The enemy's most effective strategy is not the loud sin that triggers instant guilt. It's the quiet omission that never triggers anything at all. Guilt, uncomfortable as it is a smoke alarm. It's doing its job. The truly dangerous condition is a soul with the alarm disconnected, not because there's no fire, but because it's been convinced there's nothing left to burn. This isn't a theory invented for the modern age. Trace it back, and you find the same pattern repeating across centuries of recorded spiritual writing, warning after warning, generation after generation. Early monastic writers in the deserts of Egypt, some of the first Christians to systematically study temptation, described what they called the noonday demon, not a spirit of violent evil, but a spirit of complacency and drift that struck not in moments of crisis, but in the ordinary stillness of midday when nothing dramatic was happening at all. It was considered more dangerous than the temptations that came at night, wrapped in obvious darkness, because it arrived disguised as simple boredom, simple fatigue, simple, this doesn't matter that much. Medieval theologians built entire moral frameworks around the same insight, that the deadliest sins were rarely the loud ones. Pride was always placed at the top of the list, not because pride looks the most evil, but because pride is the one vice capable of convincing a person that they have no vices at all. And in more recent history, spiritual writers, mystics, and figures within the church associated with warnings about hidden spiritual danger have repeated some version of the same core idea again and again. The greatest trick isn't getting someone to embrace evil outright. It's getting them to stop believing evil is something that could ever apply to them. Century after century, tradition after tradition within the church, the warning doesn't change shape. Only the language does. You are most vulnerable not when you feel weak, but when you feel like you no longer need to be strong. Here is where this story stops being abstract. Picture someone, call her Sarah, a composite of the kind of story spiritual directors describe hearing over and over in confession rooms and counseling offices across the world. Sarah isn't a bad person. She's successful, organized. the kind of person others describe as put together. She goes years not rejecting faith outright, just quietly setting it aside, not because of some dramatic crisis of belief. Just because life got full and faith got small, and small things are easy to stop noticing, she tells herself she's fine, and by every visible measure she is. Good job, good relationships, no scandal, no collapse, no headline-worthy failure. Then, one ordinary afternoon, something happens that has nothing to do with any of that. A phone call, a diagnosis. Not hers, someone she loves. And in that single moment, every quiet justification she'd built for years, I'll get to it later, I'm not that bad, I can handle my own life, collapses all at once, because for the first time in a long time, she is face to face with something she genuinely cannot fix, manage, optimize, or outrun on her own. This is the moment spiritual writers describe as the cracking point, not a punishment, but an exposure. The lie doesn't announce itself and leave quietly. It gets revealed, usually at the exact moment life stops cooperating with the illusion of total self-sufficiency. And here is the part that should genuinely give you chills. This moment comes for almost everyone, eventually. Not because life is cruel, but because no human being, regardless of wealth, discipline, intelligence, or willpower, was ever actually designed to carry everything alone. The lie only works while circumstances allow you to feel self-sufficient. It cannot survive contact with real suffering, real loss, real limitation. The question isn't whether that moment will come. The question is what you've built underneath yourself before it arrives. At this point, you might expect the obvious next step. So just start relying on God. Just start being humble. Easy fix. But here's where the story gets more uncomfortable, not less. Catholic teaching is clear that the opposite extreme is also a trap. And it's one that catches spiritually engaged people just as often as it catches the indifferent. Call it the second disguise of the same lie. Despair dressed up as humility. This is the person who swings the opposite direction, who becomes so consumed by their own unworthiness, their own failures, their own sense of being unfixable, that they convince themselves grace, mercy, or forgiveness simply isn't available to them specifically. I've done too much. I've failed too many times. Even God has limits, and I've crossed them. This sounds like the opposite of pride. It sounds like extreme humility. But spiritual tradition treats it as the same root lie, wearing an inverted mask, because it still insists that the outcome depends entirely on the person, that grace has some ceiling you personally have exceeded, that mercy is a resource that runs out. Both extremes, total self-sufficiency and total despair, share the same fatal flaw. Both refuse to actually receive help. One refuses because it thinks it doesn't need any. The other refuses because it thinks it's too late to accept any. The real answer, according to this tradition, sits in the deliberately uncomfortable middle. Not pride, not despair, but dependence. The humbling, unglamorous admission that you need something outside yourself, and the equally difficult belief that it's actually still available to you, no matter how far gone you feel. That middle path doesn't trend well on social media. It doesn't fit on a motivational poster. It's not, you've got this, and it's not, it's hopeless. It's something much quieter. You don't have this alone, and that's actually good news, not bad news. So how do you know if this lie has already taken root in you? Spiritual directors, drawing on centuries of this tradition, tend to point to the same handful of quiet warning signs. None of them dramatic, all of them easy to miss. 1, you measure your soul by comparison, not by truth. If your honest answer to "how am I doing spiritually" is better than most people I know, that's not an evaluation. That's the first disguise, working exactly as designed. 2, later has become your default answer to anything that requires change, not once, as a pattern. A conversation you keep avoiding, a habit you keep meaning to break, a relationship you keep meaning to repair. If later is comfortable and consistent, it isn't really a plan. It's a lie wearing a calendar. 3, you feel a quiet resistance to actually asking for help, even when you clearly need it. Not because help isn't available, because some part of you has decided that needing it says something bad about you. 4, your self-improvement feels exhausting instead of hopeful. If you're constantly trying to fix yourself and constantly falling short, and the falling short makes you want to hide rather than reach out, that's disguise 3 and disguise 2 colliding. Self-sufficiency curdling into despair. 5, and this might be the quietest one of all. You can't remember the last time you genuinely asked out loud or in silence for help from something bigger than yourself, not a passing thought, an actual humbling request. If even one of these lands uncomfortably close, that discomfort isn't an accident. According to this entire tradition, it's the alarm working. It's the flicker of conscience the lie tries hardest to extinguish. And the good news buried inside all of this, the reason this video isn't meant to end in dread, is simple. The moment you can name a lie, it starts losing its grip. Deception depends on staying invisible. The instant it's seen clearly, named plainly, it stops being a hidden trap and becomes just another choice you're free to reject. So here's where this leaves us. The most dangerous lie was never the obvious one. It was never going to look like a monster in the dark. It was always going to look like confidence, like independence, like I've got this. And maybe somewhere in the last 30 minutes you recognized a piece of it in yourself, not as an accusation, as an invitation, because the entire point of naming this lie isn't guilt, it's freedom. It's the simple, sobering, ultimately hopeful truth that you were never actually meant to carry everything alone. And the moment you stop pretending otherwise is the same moment everything gets lighter, not heavier. This is, at its core, the same message figures across the church. Priests, spiritual directors, and yes, teachers like Fr, Chris Alar in his own ministry have spent their lives trying to communicate in different ways. Not that you are hopeless, and not that you are already fine, but that you are loved enough to be helped and humble enough, if you choose it, to finally let that help in. If this video made you see something in yourself you hadn't noticed before, that's not an accident. That's the whole point. Subscribe if you want more of these deep dives into quiet lies that shape how we live. And if you've recognized this pattern in your own life, you're not alone in it. That's kind of the whole lesson.